with me 1 second here. There it goes. Finally. All right, the distributive property. Now, basically, we sort of practiced the distributive property in that little exercise at the beginning of class. Okay? Distributive property is I gave you some steps to follow. I distributed the steps to you. You went and did those steps, and then you came back and distributed stuff to your team. Okay? Distributive property is taking, for our example, taking a number, for example, 4 times 3 plus 9. Okay, 4 times 3 plus 9. The distributive property is used in multiplication when I have a number or a variable outside of a parentheses and there is no operation sign in between it. Okay, like right here, there's not an addition or subtraction sign. Okay, what I'm going to do, and we've talked about the distributive property before, we talked about it last year. Okay, we're going to take and distribute the 4 to what's inside the parentheses. Okay, and how we show that is this way. 4 times 3 plus 4 times 9. That is taking the 4 and distributing it, okay, to the other things inside the parentheses. 4 times 3 plus 4 times 9. Okay? Now, those of you who had phones, make sure they're turned off so they don't interrupt the class. Okay? Now, for our purposes, there will be 2 different things you're going to do today. Okay? You're going to show the distributive property, which is this right here. Okay? This is an equivalent expression. Okay, it'll hopefully show up there in a minute. It's running a little behind today. Okay, that is an equivalent expression. Okay, there is a difference between an equivalent expression and using the distributive property to simplify. Okay, if I'm using the distributive property to simplify the problem, then I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to distribute to both things inside the parentheses, so that's 4 times 3 plus 4 times 9. Then I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to actually simplify it to its lowest terms. Okay, so that's 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 4 times 9, which is 36. 12 plus 36 is what? Not everybody at once. What? 48. Okay, so that's using the distributive property to simplify the expression. Okay, this up here was using the distributive property to express an equivalent expression. There is a difference. So you need to make sure that you read the directions carefully and do what the directions tell you to do. Now, they may also say use the distributive property to evaluate the expression. Okay, that's another way that they'll put the directions to come up with, let's give me an answer. Okay, now, some of you may be going, well, why don't I just take 3 plus 9 and get 12 and then multiply it times 4? Okay, it's a good question. Because we need to know the distributive property, because the distributive property is something you're going to use from now till the time you get out of high school, and then if you take more math in college, out of college. Okay? Because most of the expressions that you're going to see in the future, starting in chapter 7, okay, are not going to be two numbers inside the parentheses. It may look like this. It may be 4 times x plus 9. And we don't know what x is. Okay? And they tell you to evaluate or simplify. Okay, well, I've got to evaluate or simplify it. That's why we need, one of the main reasons we have to know the distributive property. The distributive property is the basis for most multiplication and, most of the addition and subtraction stuff we're going to do. Okay, so we still do the same thing. We still distribute the 4, so we have 4 times x plus 4 times 9. Okay, well, 4 times x, do we know what x is? No. So we're just 4x plus, what is 4 times 9? 36. And that's your answer. That's your answer simplified. Now, we are not going to have those types of problems today. Okay? But it is one of the major reasons why we need to understand how the distributive property works. Because if we don't, then you're not going to know how to do that problem. We're going to have other issues with some other problems as well. Okay? Now, the distributive property can also make problems easier. Okay? For example, this problem, 4 times 3/5 plus 4 times 2/5. If you were doing this problem, what step would you do first? Anybody? What multiplication? No, I understand. When we're multiplying fractions, we change mixed numbers to improper fractions. Is there any mixed numbers? No, but there's whole numbers. So you'd have to change 4 to 4 over 1 times 3/5 plus 4 over 1 times 2/5, and then you got to multiply it out, right? Okay? In those two expressions, I have an expression here, and I have an expression here. What is the common factor in the expressions? Okay, what is the common factor in those two expressions, Jacob? They both have 4. Because 5 is not a number by itself, correct? Isn't 5 a part of the fraction? Okay, so we can't use the 5 because it belongs with the fraction. However, we can use the 4. We can reverse the distributive property. Okay, in other words, up here, I have a 4 there and a 4 there, right? Where did that 4 start? Outside or inside the parentheses? Outside the parentheses. In other words, right here was right there. So I can do the same thing here. I can take here and put that one thing outside the parentheses. So what is left that goes inside the parentheses? 3 over 5 and plus 2 over 5. Now we've just made our life a little easier. What is 3/5 plus 2/5? 5/5, which is, what, Jesse? 1 whole. What's 4 times 1? 4. There you go. That's the answer. Okay? So we use the distributive property to make a problem easier. Okay? Now, that would be true. Let me think of another one here. Yeah. Okay. This one here, 3 times 9.6 minus 3 times 1.6. Okay? So, what is the common factor between the two terms? 3. So I can take and move the 3 outside my parentheses. What would be inside the parentheses? 9.6 and what? Minus 1.6. Okay? Now, 9.6 minus 1.6 is what? 8. What is 3 times 8? 24. Okay, so you use the distributive property in reverse to help you solve that problem. Most of you, if we had to do 3 times 9.6 and then take 3 times 1.6, you'd have to do that out on paper. That's something you can do in your head if you can just mentally picture it. Okay, let's look at the distributive property here. Let's say I had three times 199. Okay. Everybody put your pencils down. Put your pencil down, Brandon. Somebody raise your hand and tell me what 3 times 199 is. Don't pick up your pencil. What is 3 times 199? Preston. What? No. Quade? 500? No. Tayshawn? 597. Now, let me ask you this. Brandon, what is 3 times 200? 600. Cameron, what's 3 times 1? 3. Jesse, what's 600 minus 3? 597. Okay, so we just used the distributive property. I said basically this. 3 times 200 minus 1. And we used the distributive. What is 200 minus 1? 199. And I said, what is 3 times 200? You were able to do that in your head. That's 600. Minus, what is 3 times 1, which is 3. 600 minus 3, 597. Okay, so that's a way we can use the distributive property, okay, to help us solve a multiplication problem. Now, bear with me one second. I'm thinking one I'm going to do. All right. Let's look at this problem right here. 24 times 22. Okay. Now, I can do that problem with the distributive property, or I can do that problem like you've regularly done it. Okay? I want you to do 24 times 22 on your paper just like you would normally do it. Okay? So do 24 times 22 on your paper. Now, I'm going to show you that you've basically used the distributive property for the most part for a long time. Okay? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this same problem and come down here, and I'm going to tell you (24 times 22). Okay? I'm going to use the distributive property. That means I need to break up one of my numbers. I'm going to break that up into 20 plus 2. So I have 24 times, parentheses, 20 plus 2. Now I'm going to distribute that 24 to both things. That would be 24 times 20 plus 24 times 2. Well, 24 times 20 I should be able to do in my head. What's 2 times 24? 48, and I add a 0 to it. Plus, we just said that 2 times 24 is 48, right? Okay. Now, if I put those two things together, I get 528. Now, I will show you how you've used the distributive property. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times that is 4. Bring down a 0. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 2 is 4. That gives me 8, 2, 1. And if you look at it, 480, 480, 48, 48. Okay, you've used the distributive property since whenever you started multiplying two-digit numbers. Okay, they just didn't call it the distributive property because at that time it's too complicated for your young brains to understand. So they just tell you, here's what you're doing, do this, bring down a 0, do that. But all it is a distributive property. Okay? Now, I want us to look at this problem. I want you to do this problem right here. 3 times 7.3 plus 3 times 2.7. You have 20 seconds. You have 10 seconds. Okay, put your pencil down. Raise your hand if you got an answer. Brandon, raise your hand. I know you got an answer because you put your pencil down like 10 seconds ago. Did you get an answer, Brandon? Okay. 30. That is correct. Tayshawn, Trinity, is that what y'all got? No? Okay. How did you get 30, Brandon?
I did 7.3.
Right. And you got what? 10. Okay. Distributive property. Here is the common factor. Take it out and put it outside the parentheses. Okay. 7.3 plus 2.7. That's equal to 10. 3 times 10. 30. Okay, that is the distributive property. That is how you use the distributive property to evaluate. Now, let's look at number 15. I want you to do that one. Go. And I'm timing you. Who has an answer? Cameron. 44 is correct. Okay. 44. Once again, the distributive property. Take the 4 and go outside. Now you're going, well, there's 2 of them there. Why are we going down to 1? Okay. The reason you're going down to 1 is because of the distributive property. You take the common one and put it outside. Now, let me cover this one, then I'll cover something else. You have inside 8.1 plus 2.9. What is 8.1 plus 2.9? 11. Thank you, Tristan. 4 times 11? 44. What? 8.1, 2.9. 9 plus 1, 0. Carry my 1, bring down my decimal. 1 plus 8 is 9, plus 2, 11. And then I take the 11, and that goes right there. And I took 4 times 11. Be 44. Okay? Let's look at this one. This one's a little harder. Not really, but you just have to remember your rules that we talked about or that we did on the board when we first came in. Okay, 13 times 3/7 minus 13 times negative 4/7. Okay, what's the common factor? 13. So I can take the 13 and put it outside the parentheses, which gives me 13 times 3/7 minus negative 4/7. Now, hopefully you did this on the review problem that we had at our little exercise before we started class, because here's what you have inside. You have 13, 3/7, change that to addition, do the opposite of that, which is 4/7. Now, if you use your calculator, the calculator does it for you if you type it in right. Okay? What is 3/7 plus 4/7?
That's 1 whole.
1 whole. As opposed to 2 wholes. I hate holes. Alright, so that gives me 13 times 1, which is 13. Alright? So, we are doing problems 6.7, 2 through 22. That is your homework. Everybody look at number 2. Number 2 says, I was already on there. Number 2 says, match the expression with the equivalent expression. So number 2 says 3 times 4 plus 3. Which one of those, A, B, C, or D, would be the equivalent expression? A, B, C, or D. In other words, they want you to go to the next step of distributive property and come up with an equivalent expression. So which one would it be, Christina? D. D is in dog. Okay, so number 2 is D. Okay, because you distribute, and that's 3 times 4 plus 3 times 3. And it'll get there in a second, hopefully. Now, the Wi-Fi is lagging today. Yeah, and it's lagging today. Okay, so D would be the answer. Three would be, which one? B, yeah. Yeah. All right. So go ahead and get started.